Okay, in this next video, what I want to do is go over the practice handout. If you haven't done it yet, be sure you try it first on your own before you go through this video on how to do it. So on the graph, this graph we have here shows the aggregate demand curve. And this point A is on the short run aggregate supply curve and on the aggregate demand curve, but it's not on the long run aggregate supply curve. And I've given you here the equation for the MP curve and the equation from the IS curve, and then the equation for the aggregate supply curve. So from this, we can look at and say, okay, inflation expectations then have to be equal to 1, and output, potential output then has to be equal to 20. So to solve for the aggregate demand curve, we need the IS curve and the MP curve. And we can calculate that. Y equals 36 minus 3R. Y equals 36 minus 3 times 2 plus pi. And I get y equals 30 minus 3 pi as the aggregate demand curve. So we'll say y equals 30 minus 3 pi here. Now the next question, the short run, what's the short run level of output inflation and inflation expectations? The short run equilibrium is at point A. So in order to figure out where we are at point A, inflation and output, we need to know the equation of aggregate supply. So aggregate supply curve is going to be pi equals 1 plus 2 times y minus 20. And we know y is 30 minus 3 pi minus 20. That is 1 plus 2 times 10 minus 3 pi. And I get pi equals 1 plus 20 minus 6 pi. Pi equals 21 minus 6 pi. 7 pi equals 21. Therefore, pi equals 3. So the inflation rate here then at point A is 3%. The level of output is y, let's see, equals 30 minus 3 pi, which is going to be 30 minus 9, or 21. Inflation is 3, and inflation expectations is given in the first equation there as 1. And we'll rewrite the aggregate supply curve up here. It was given to you as pi equals 1 plus 2 times y minus 20 there. Now next, what is the long run level of output inflation and inflation? Well, that's going to be right here, the intersection of the long run aggregate supply curve and the aggregate demand curve. You can see from the graph it's going to be more than 3. And you can see that output is going to be equal to 20. So the long run level of output is going to be at potential, which is 20. And that long run aggregate supply curve, which is y equals 20, is going to, we can solve that where the intersection of the demand curve is, which is y equals 30 minus 3 pi. Therefore, 20 equals 30 minus 3 pi. 3 pi equals 10. pi then is 10 over 3, or 3 1/3. So we know we're going to get to that long run equilibrium at output of 20, inflation at 3 1/3, and that aggregate supply curve is going to have to slowly move up. Currently, that aggregate supply curve has expectations of inflation equal to 1, but inflation is actually 3. So inflation expectations are going to have to change from 1 up to 3. So inflation expectations are going to have to increase up to 3%. And the aggregate supply curve then is going to have to be pi equals 3 plus 2 times y minus 20. So to figure out what the new level of equilibrium output and inflation is, we need the aggregate demand curve, which is y equals 30 minus 3 pi, and solve for inflation and output. I get pi equals 3 plus 2 times 30 minus 3 pi minus 20. Pi equals 3 plus 2 times 10 minus 3 pi. Then pi equals 3 plus 20 minus 6 pi. Pi equals 23 minus 6 pi. 7 pi equals 23. I get pi equals 23 over 7, which is about 3.285. And then I can plug that into y, and the equation I get y is 20.14. So you can see that this aggregate supply curve jumps up quite a bit here. And we get 20.14 for the output and 3.285 for the inflation rate. So now people's new expectations are increasing. Correction, this was 3.285. People's expectations of inflation are changing from 3 to 3.285. So now we have a new expectation of inflation that is now 3.285. So our aggregate supply curve here, we can solve for this. It's 3.285 plus 2 times, put in the equation, the demand curve, 10 minus 3 pi, and I get pi equals 3.285 plus 20 minus 6 pi. Pi equals 23.285 minus 6 pi. I get an inflation rate of 3.326. So now we're a little bit closer to where we're going. And to calculate y, 30 minus 3 pi, y is 30 minus 3 times 3.326. I get y equals 20.02. So we'll keep approaching that. We'll get closer and closer to y equals 20 and an inflation rate of 3 1/3.